Deadliest Wars in American History. To start off, my presentation is on 5 wars, including World War I, World War II, and the Vietnam. And in my book that I'm making, I go over the causes, main events, conclusion, and more about these wars. Now, for a quick summary of each war. The Afghanistan War. The Afghanistan War is a still-lasting conflict between the United States and Afghan forces against the Taliban, caused by the refusal to turn over terrorist leader Osama bin Laden after the 9/11 events. The war has been active for 20 years, even after the death of Osama bin Laden, and over 2,312 U.S. soldiers have been killed in the conflict, with another 20,066 soldiers injured. And only recently has the U.S. agreed to pull out of Afghanistan. The Second War, the Vietnam. The Vietnam War was sparked after the Viet Minh forces and French forces were combating over Vietnam. The American involvement only began due to the fear of a domino effect of communism, which was pretty much communism spreading after communism spreads to Vietnam. And it was very difficult due to terrible conditions for defenders, with mines and traps everywhere, the Viet Cong troops everywhere, including in civilian groups, so you could have someone shooting out of a building with a family in there, and it's like bad because are you going to shoot into a family's building? Like, they just completely abused their position, and this ended up leading into mass civilian murder, unnecessary American death, and protests within the United States, because, I mean, why were we here? It's just a domino effect. Like, the communism spread anyway, so why did we waste 50,000 lives? And this ended up causing a mass amount of PTSD and mental illness from U.S. troops, and ended up with 59,220 dead as a result, in a war that did not even need to happen. World War I. World War I, or the Great War, as people call it, commenced as a result of the Austria-Hungarian Archduke Franz Ferdinand being murdered, along with his wife, by a Serbian nationalist. This led into a continental war in Europe and Germany. And Germany, Austria-Hungary, Bulgaria, and the Ottoman Empire were up against Great Britain, France, Russia, Italy, Romania, Japan, and the U.S. War in Europe spread like wildfire, with the conflict breaking out continentally. And the war lasted 4 years, taking over 19 million lives, with over half of them being civilians. My fourth war is World War II. World War II, or the deadliest conflict modern warfare has ever seen, or any warfare has ever seen at that, took place when Germany, who was unsettled by the Treaty of Versailles, elected popular politician Adolf Hitler. Adolf Hitler wanted superiority for the Aryan race, which was people with blonde hair and blue eyes, which I found funny personally because he did not have either. With Germany, Japan, Italy, and the Soviet Union versus US, France, Great Britain, and China to a small extent. And his goal was to gain more land for the Aryan race and to exterminate all the Jewish in German-occupied Europe. In the conflict of the war, Adolf Hitler, with Soviet, Japanese, Italian, and more help, expanded into Europe, attacking and taking over France and Poland, occupying Czechoslovakia, Austria, and a lot more. And with the U.S. being the only country with the current availability to combat the Japanese in the Pacific, the U.S. went to war. And with mixtures of Allied troops at war in Europe, with the U.S. and Japan at war in the Pacific, war kept escalating at a rapid rate. And with U.S. relief in Europe, the tables finally started to turn towards the Allies. With Germany revealing the true plan of invading the Soviet Union, this gave the opportunity to the Allies to invade while Germany was focused. And with the eventual defeat of Japan in the Pacific, and Germany and the Soviet Union, Germany became cornered by the Soviet and Allied troops after the Allied invasion of Normandy, or, as most people know, D-Day. And by mid-1945, Hitler had committed suicide and Germany had surrendered, leaving Japan versus the entirety of the Allied forces. And when considering the risks and death penalty that could be in Japan, it was authorized that the atomic bombs may be be unleashed on Japan in order to make them consider the peace treaty. And this ended up with an overall death toll of 60 to 80 million people, with 50 to 55 million civilians dead, 21 to 25 million soldiers dead, and the Holocaust leaving 6 million Jews dead, including 1 million children. And the final war we'll be going over today is the Civil War. The Civil War is a historic war between the southern states and the northern states in the U.S. in the 1860s. The North, who were fighting against slavery, and the South, fighting for it. And the tension had gradually been rising once people started realizing the hypocrisy in fighting for a free country with liberty. And with the election of President Abraham Lincoln after the creation of the Republican Party, which was created in order to stop slavery, 7 American states broke off from the United States, creating the Confederacy. And with an early Confederate victory, another few states joined them. And eventually, with slaves having been released from northern states, and President Lincoln releasing them from southern states, supplies began to get scarce for the South. But with good military tradition and good military skill, the war wasn't quickly over. After 4 years of fighting, troops on the East Coast took over and destroyed much of the South in their path, and cornered the last of the Confederate troops, ending the Civil War. This ended up being the bloodiest war ever fought on American turf, with an estimated death toll of 750,000 people dead. And that's it for my presentation. Thank you for watching.